Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. From the waters of Florida to a small town in Minnesota, no issue a community faces is too big or small to tackle. We meet the hardworking Americans who are making a difference across our nation. Let's begin our journey in Colorado, where alternative emergency response teams are answering mental health-related calls for help. Here's Jeff Pegues.
In Aurora, Colorado, this response team is racing to an emergency call. We rode along with mental health counselor Tandis Ashami.
A student had made some suicidal threats yesterday and did not make it to school today.
A school counselor called 911 concerned about an absent student's well-being.
911, what's the address?
Across the country, 911 centers are inundated with similar calls. One study says that up to 10% of 911 calls nationwide potentially involve mental health issues.
The next available officer will respond out to your location.
In Washington, D.C., where mental health professionals also respond to some situations, several dozen calls a day fit that category.
Put the knife down now!
In the past, police officers have been dispatched to those calls. Some have ended in tragedy. Aurora's police chief Vanessa Wilson says police with weapons aren't always the answer.
A lot of times it's not appropriate for officers to have to go to these calls and, to possibly escalate the situation when it doesn't need to be so.
Aurora has two response teams. One team pairs a police officer with a mental health professional. This team does not. They only take calls where there is no apparent danger. Courtney Tassin is the team's program manager. The fact that you're not armed, the fact that you're not wearing a uniform, do you think that helps in some of these situations?
I think so. So we always focus on what's least restrictive. How do we keep from further traumatizing this person who's already in a very vulnerable state?
Tassin says there were more than 800 mental health-related calls for help during a 4-month period here.
We have calls for people that are in mental health crisis every day.
Sergeant Aaron Bunch is a 16-year veteran of the Aurora Police.
Police officers are trained to do a lot of things. What they don't have are master's degrees in social work.
The day we rode along to the potentially suicidal student, the team waved off a police response.
We received a call from your school today. I just wanted to touch base.
From a nearby parking lot, they reached the student.
I spoke with mom and spoke with kiddo, and we don't have any concerns for safety at this time.
Resolved without a siren or a gun in sight.
President Joe Biden's pick of Ketanji Brown Jackson makes her the first Black woman nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. But the landmark nomination comes after years of campaigning by a group of women dedicated to making this historic milestone happen. Nicole Killian spoke with the team leading the initiative for diversity in our democracy.
I'm looking forward to making sure there's a Black woman on the Supreme Court to make sure we, in fact, get every representation.
As soon as President Biden made that campaign pledge, it was game on.
I was ecstatic. It was something that I personally had been working for and thinking about my entire career. But I didn't see it catch fire the way that I thought it should.
So have you all rented your cars?
Attorney Kim Tigner tapped some of her lawyer friends during the height of the social justice movement in the summer of 2020.
No justice, no peace!
Form the group She Will Rise.
There is not another Black women's created and led entity within this space that is helping to inform the discourse. And this is a labor of love for us. I mean, we are living this.
The collective has been dedicated to elevating an African-American woman to the high court, launching a petition and a website to track judicial nominations.
Why do you feel it's important to have a Black woman on the Supreme Court?
First and foremost, because we've never had one. And we know that the demographics of this country are changing every single day. And we believe that representation is important.
The nomination of Mr. Thurgood Marshall, Solicitor General, to the position of Associate Justice, Supreme Court.
When Thurgood Marshall became a Supreme Court Justice and he walked into the room, everything changed. The tone, the tenor of the other justices also changed, right? And so what we want to see is someone who can bring her legal acumen, her brilliance in scholarship, and her lived experience to those conversations and to those deliberations.
The reality is, we actually think that the absence of a Black woman on this court is an abject failure, frankly. You look at the state of the country, and today, Black women make 63 cents on the dollar. It's 2022.
And also on the concept of what it means to be a deliberative body, right? Now, we have to understand the civil rights movement is built on 5-4 decisions on the Supreme Court, right? And there have been times in history where justices have had their minds changed because of these conversations that are happening. It's that deliberation.
But what do you say to people who say this is just an affirmative action pick?
It's an interesting argument because in this country, the people who benefit most from affirmative action are white women. And yet no one claimed affirmative action when Justice Amy Coney Barrett was nominated and eventually confirmed.
In 27 days.
Right. And so when someone says affirmative action, the adverse to that is them basically saying that there are no qualified Black women to serve on the Supreme Court. And that's obviously not true.
April Reign created the Oscars So White hashtag in 2015. The viral movement led the Academy to make sweeping changes to diversify its voting membership and film requirements. When it comes to the Supreme Court, only 7 justices have not been white men in its 233-year history.
In essence, is this courts so white?
It is. It is. And it's not just the Supreme Court, it's the entire federal judiciary. We come in all shapes and sizes and colors and genders and sexual orientations. The judiciary, up and down, from the Supreme Court to your local judge, should represent the community. That is why it's important to have more people who identify as women on the court. That is why it's important to have people who are visibly disabled. That is why it's important to think about people's ages as well, because these justices will be on the court for decades to come.
My nominee for the United States Supreme Court is Judge Ketanji Jackson.
Now that the president has nominated Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, they say they look forward to the day when she is confirmed.
It's going to be emotional, quite frankly, because there is the feeling seen component of this.
To me, this is huge. This woman's work will impact generations.
And my presence before you.
So I think about Shirley Chisholm saying, you know, if they don't offer you a seat at the table, bring your own folding chair.
That's right.
And that's what we've been trying to do, forcing a seat at the table so that our daughters can sit there.
And see someone who looks like them.
Coming up, researchers in Florida who are redefining what a fish farm can be. You're watching Eye on America. Fish farming has gotten a bad reputation as an unsustainable method for producing seafood. But so-called aquaculture has come a long way, as our Jeff Glor found out in Sarasota, Florida.
This is one of the few totally recirculating aquaculture farms in the world.
We met Dr. Kevin Main at the Moat Aquaculture Research Park in Sarasota, Florida. The park is 20 miles away from the ocean, but has seawater running through it constantly, recycled and reused 24 hours a day.
Fish under quarantine is not for COVID reasons.
No, definitely not for COVID reasons. That is when we first bring them in from the wild. We have to keep them by themselves and have to check them and make sure they're healthy and put them through some treatments.
4.14. At this farm, Maine is raising red drum, snook, and more.
So these are what kind of fish?
Almaco jacks.
Almaco jacks. They look hungry.
Yep. They're hoping we're going to give us some lunch.
If I stuck my finger in there, I wouldn't lose it, but it would hurt.
You could lose the tip. I wouldn't recommend it.
Almaco jack, also known as long-fin yellowtail, have very sharp teeth and are also very adaptable. Maine originally found these fish about 100 miles out in the Gulf of Mexico. They've been raised to be the perfect, healthy breeders.
We got males and females in here, and At least 3 to 4 times a week, they will reproduce in this tank.
Fertilized eggs rise to the surface and are sent out via tubes to a collecting tank before being sent to a hatchery. Then eventually, your plate.
It's like a fertility clinic.
It is. For fish.
For fish.
Farming fish isn't new. 52% of fish consumed around the world come from onshore or offshore fish farms. The first thing you might think of is farm-raised salmon. The industry, however, has been hampered by a history of bad practices, including overuse of antibiotics, overcrowded facilities, releasing waste into the environment, and lax regulation.
Fish farms have faced opposition. Why do you believe those protests are misguided?
Because they're based on technology that has been going through a change, moving from learning how to do it to learning how to do it better.
Which is what Maine is working on here. She says depending on the size of the fish, the water in these tanks could be used, filtered, and reused again in as little as an hour. After it leaves the pools, it's sent to an outside filtration system, which eliminates any toxic nitrogen put out by the fish, but keeps the nutrients. From there, the water travels into this plant house, where it's used to grow a second crop, in this case purslane. That process also serves to clean the water before it's returned to the fish. It seems development of these new technologies couldn't come at a more crucial time.
It's critical that we provide protein to feed the world, and there is no more sustainable protein that's produced than through fish farming. These plants are being grown hydroponically.
Scientists like Maine are getting support from rising chefs around the country, including Steve Phelps, who's become an outspoken proponent for healthy, farm-raised fish.
To watch how an operation works where I can have my protein and have a salad on the same plate right now it's fascinating.
Look at that stuff.
I'm afraid of what's happening out on our waters. The pollution in the water, the quotas for the fishermen, they're all starting to pollution's getting higher, quotas getting smaller, and they're going to stop fishing soon.
Over the last 60 years, global demand for fish meat has more than doubled, while global supply has dropped. According to Maine and Phelps, it doesn't have to be that way.
It feels like for so long we were told to buy wild. That's not the case anymore.
No, the numbers are staggering of how much we're overfishing, and what's great for a restaurant and a chef like me is we've got consistency in product like this. They're fed the same thing, they're in the same environment, they're harvested at the same size, so when I go to create a menu, I can always guarantee that I'll have a 2-pound fish on it or whatever's necessary.
For Phelps and Kevin Maine, the key to ensuring a future for farm-raised fish is getting the right information out there about the process, where the food comes from, and what it will take to make sure it lasts.
One thing I've learned is that we've got to communicate more with the public. When people come here and they see how it's actually operating, they're comfortable with it. It's a fresh product, it's local, it's going right here to your restaurants, and the chefs know the product, the grocery stores know it. It's really the wave of the future.
The pandemic has changed the way we shop for nearly everything, including cars. With the nation continuing to face chip shortages and supply chain delays, cars have been elusive on the lots. But a small-town Minnesota car dealership found a way to make it their best year ever. Jeff Wagner of CBS Minnesota shows us how.
Along Highway 55 in the town of Kimball, the road to success is a generational journey. Ancestors paved the way.
So this would be my grandfather, Andrew, who started the business in 1928.
Family maintain it, and loyal customers trust it.
I have to be thankful to our local area for supporting us, because it can't happen without that.
Stephen Mouse is one of 3 brothers who own AM Mouse & Son.
There's no pressure. There's no pressure.
He and Ed run the sales arm of the business,
Okay.
while Carrie manages the service center. Outside of selling and fixing cars, the dealership features a general store and gas station, the humble beginnings of this 90-plus year anchor in town.
There's a story when I was a baby, they held up my hand and they said, yeah, his hand's almost big enough to fit around the gas nozzle, so I could start pumping gas as early as possible.
That multifaceted approach keeps the business humming, especially when problems like supply chain issues hamper their bread and butter.
We're sitting in our showroom right now and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 new vehicles. This is what we have for new cars here on the ground.
That's it.
That's it. We typically have 80.
Despite all the challenges of the pandemic, AM Mouse & Son had the most successful year in its history in 2021, selling nearly 900 cars. That's more than the entire population of the town it calls home.
It's solidly 80% of our sales right now are all sold orders.
A sold order involves a customer buying a new car without seeing it in person. It means test driving an older model and trusting the salesperson's knowledge.
And our customers have responded well to this.
Goodwill that's earned through years of honest sales.
I mean, there's real quality of work and service there.
David McLaughlin's grandparents bought a cabin in Kimball in the 80s. They then bought several cars at Mouse, the beginnings of a family tradition.
We all get our cars from there. My grandparents bought 5 or 6, and my folks 6 or 7 or 8. My brother Mike, he's probably bought at least 8 cars from them.
That is the essence of AM Mouse & Son is our customer base and our loyal customer base.
Taking care of them means taking care of their community, since so many of those paying customers are their neighbors.
It isn't just where we do business, it's our backyard.
Barry Belknap is the VP at Harvest Bank. It was the top donor for the project to build Kimball's new library.
The building that we had it housed in was deemed not suitable.
AM Mouse & Son, located across the street, was number 2.
When you have people, whether it's business people or people within the community with civic commitment, that have those sorts of traits, it's, this is what you can make happen.
Whether it's investing in their town or back into their business, Stephen says adapting to a changing world allows them to keep their values alive.
I hope it's an indication that we're doing things right,
while laying the groundwork for success down the road.
Surviving past this generation, that is something that I think about a lot, and what that's going to take. I hope we can do it.
After the break, the use of solar power is electrifying the nation. We show you how people living in urban areas without the panels are still plugging in. This is Eye on America. Recent research shows 1 out of every 600 homes in America is installing solar panels each quarter. But for those living in crowded urban areas, access isn't always easy. In August, I took a trip to Washington, D.C. to see how a farm is revolutionizing renewable energy and making solar power possible for all.
In southeast Washington, D.C., a once abandoned and vacant lot is now prime farmland.
This is up and running.
Up and running, and we actually have slots open.
Slots open?
Yes.
A landscape loaded with ground-mounted solar panels, generating clean, affordable energy to low and moderate income households and local businesses. Even renters without roof space can benefit. Crystal Hansley has helped make those connections.
This is a 510 kilowatt system, and that serves around 100 customers.
And are they mostly people who live around here?
Yes, so this solar farm connects to its local utility, and anyone who receives that bill, so any DC customer, anyone that's in the same location of the utility can tap into this farm.
Scores of other projects are cropping up in and around cities, part of a growing energy model called community solar that includes Hansley's company, We Solar.
If you're looking for residual income and you're looking to create ways to help the planet, save money, create a benefit for your local community, I would definitely consider working with community solar companies.
Homeowner Erica Ruffin signed up hoping to save 25% on her electric bill.
We saw that we can actually take advantage of solar power via the farms. We knew right away that's what we wanted to do.
Ready?
My husband actually lost his job last year due to COVID, so we're trying to save money any way that we can.
Still, some communities are hesitant, mainly because they've been left out of the renewable energy discussion.
Today, we are celebrating the fact that more than 100 homes in our community have been equipped with solar panels through the Solar for All program.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser and the Department of Energy and Environment launched a program called Solar for All, which works with the D.C. Sustainable Energy Utility to connect 100,000 low-income residents to solar by 2032.
Our expertise is the construction and the technical financing that goes with developing the projects.
That's why New Columbia Solar partnered with Hansley.
When we look at sites,
Sam Walker is their VP of Finance.
You have to be innovative with the way you reach out to folks and groups who can leverage online communities, leverage church groups and other community organizations to build a network, to build a local community of subscribers for a project that way is just much more effective.
Trust is key.
Trust is huge.
There's one thing to develop a community solar farm and then tell the community be a part of it versus when you engage the community from the beginning, get their insight as where you should do the siting and the marketing and use language that they're familiar with, then your project is more successful.
For her to bring it to us to encourage our involvement was pretty impressive. And I just prayed. I said,
Reverend Derek DeWitt is the director of the Maryland Baptist Aged Home in Baltimore. After hearing Hansley's pitch, he registered the 100-year-old nursing home with the White Marsh Solar Farm shortly before COVID.
Minority communities play a part not only in achieving net zero and engaging in energy initiatives that's out there, but to have an opportunity for our residents and constituents to save money as well was very important. I think we started realizing savings in being connected to the solar farm within about 60 days of signing up.
Savings can be anywhere from 10 to 50%. And according to the Solar Energy Industries Association, through 2020, 3.1 gigawatts of community solar have been installed across 40 states in the U.S. That's about 500,000 households. It costs on average $1 million to develop a solar farm that can serve 150 subscribers, costs that are further subsidized.
So you have your traditional green banks, you have your corporate sponsors, you have your tax equity investors, and 3 or 4 players at the table, you're able to capitalize the solar farm.
One of those corporate sponsors is coffee giant Starbucks. Michael Kaburi is their chief sustainability officer.
What we really need more companies to do is to invest in renewable projects that increase the amount of supply of clean renewable energy.
The company has pledged to shrink their carbon footprint 50% by 2030, with a seed investment of $97 million in New York State alone.
There's going to be 400 Starbucks stores that will receive access to renewable energy. There are 24,000 households and local businesses that will get access to clean renewable energy.
As for the future, Hansley's growing her business. A first-generation college graduate who is the daughter of a community activist, she's taking We Solar from subscription service to solar project developer.
What's it going to feel like when you have that first solar farm from beginning to end under your belt?
It's going to be amazing. It's going to really represent where we're going in this country, to be able to support minority women-owned business, to create equitable solar, and to save people money and decarbonizing our footprint. It feels amazing to be a part of that transition.
You've heard of Pay It Forward. Today we close our show with a story of pedaling it forward. A Virginia pastor became a local hero by turning his stolen bike into hundreds of repaired bicycles for his community. Christina Ruffini has the story of this ministry in motion.
So what's your favorite part about bike riding?
The freedom actually feels like flying.
But when someone swiped his bike, Robbie Pruitt lost his wings.
Most people, when they get their bike stolen, are pretty mad.
Sure.
Was that your initial reaction?
I wasn't happy about it, but you can get bitter about something or you can get better about it.
With the pandemic preventing the pastor from going to church, Pruitt switched gears and started a mechanical ministry in his own backyard.
The bike is a metaphor for community. It does get you out of your home and get you on the trail. And we're all on the trail of life, right?
Did you think this is where your trail was going to lead?
I had no idea. It was not at all on my list of things to do to fix 350 bikes with the community.
Some Pruitt saved from the dumpster. Hundreds more have been donated. Every bike gets a tune-up. Then Pruitt gives them away on Facebook.
This is it, man. This is your bike.
Free to anyone who needs a ride.
Thank you. All the best.
I was about to choose all of them.
When 6th grader Kai Newman outgrew his bike, he and his mom Kimberly decided to pay it forward.
His old bike was amazing. It was just too small. We decided to drop it off, and in return, we got so much more.
Now Kai is riding high on the feeling of doing good and a bigger set of wheels.
When I saw how many he had, it was like there are so many great kids out there to match up with their bike.
Why is there something so cool about getting or giving a bike?
Well, it's freedom, it's transportation. It enabled me to get to know the neighborhood kids. We don't just fix bikes together. We ride bikes together, ride around the block.
You have a biker gang.
Oh, bike gang. Yeah,
a bike
absolutely.
gang, okay, excuse me.
Biker gang, that's right.
That gang includes his own 3 children, members of his church youth group, and any neighborhood kid in search of a new skill, or even just some time outside.
How has remote learning been?
Oh, annoying.
Grease and gears, however, are a great hands-on alternative.
Fixing bikes is fun, especially when you have the right teacher.
And it's also not just fixing bikes. He talks with us.
And lately, there's a lot to talk about.
You ready, guys?
But Pruitt sees it all as part of his mission.
You're the guy who fixes bikes, and then in your other job, you're the guy who tries to fix people. Did one lead to the other?
To introduce people to the divine mechanic who can fix all things.
Bikes you can fix.
Right.
The people are a work in progress.
Right, we're all a work in progress.
A spiritual upcycle, one shiny new pedal stroke at a time.
That's the joy of this.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News, available across all platforms. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.